I've always loved the woods. There's something peaceful about being completely cut off from everything. No cars, no streetlights, no phone signal, just nature, the crackle of a campfire, and the kind of silence you only hear deep in the forest. So, when my old friend Clark called one weekend, asking if I wanted to go on a short camping trip, I didn't hesitate. We hadn't seen each other in years, and he said he'd found this perfect spot, a clearing off some old hiking trail deep in ash pine forest, about 2 hours from town. We packed light, tents, a couple of sleeping bags, snacks, and some beer. I remember thinking it was strange that Clark brought this old camping lantern instead of using a flashlight, but he said it made the woods feel more real. The drive out there was uneventful until we left the main road. The dirt path looked like it hadn't been driven on in decades. Trees leaned over from both sides, branches scraping the top of the car. I noticed the GPS signal dropped about 10 minutes in. No bars. No service. Clark laughed and said, "That's how you know it's a good spot." We parked near a dead end surrounded by pine trees. The air smelled damp, like moss and rain. As we hiked deeper in, I noticed how quiet it got. No birds, no insects, just our footsteps. After a while, we reached the clearing. It looked untouched. Tall grass, a small fire pit made of old stones, and a faint path that disappeared into the dark woods beyond. We set up camp, cracked open some beers, and started the fire. The sun dropped fast behind the trees. The forest turned from green to black in minutes. We sat around the fire, talking about old times, until Clark suddenly went quiet. His eyes shifted past me into the woods. "What is it?" I asked. He squinted. "I thought I saw someone." I turned, but there was nothing. Just trees and shadows. Probably just nerves, I figured. But something about the way he said it unsettled me. Then, a few minutes later, we both heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, circling the clearing. We called out, thinking maybe another camper had wandered close. No response. Clark stood up, grabbing the lantern. The sound stopped. He looked at me, and for a second, I saw real fear in his eyes. We decided to turn in early. I zipped myself into my tent, trying not to listen for sounds outside. The forest was silent again. Too silent. At some point during the night, I woke up to something breathing outside my tent. Not footsteps this time, actual breathing. Low, steady, human. I held my breath, eyes wide open, waiting for it to go away. Then something brushed against the tent wall, lightly at first, then harder, like a hand dragging along the fabric. I whispered, "Clark?" No answer. I slowly unzipped the tent just enough to peek out. The campfire was out, the lantern was gone, but Clark's tent, it was open. I called his name again, louder this time. Nothing. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out. The forest was pitch black. My beam barely cut through the mist that had rolled in. That's when I noticed the footprints, leading away from Clark's tent, deep into the trees. I followed them for a few yards before realizing there was a second set of footprints beside his. I yelled for him again, and something answered. Not Clark. A voice from somewhere ahead, mimicking me. "Clark!" The exact same tone I had used. I froze. My heart dropped. Then from behind me, a whisper. right by my ear. He's not Clark anymore. I spun around, flashlight shaking. No one there. I ran back to camp, grabbed my keys, and didn't even bother packing up. I just drove. Branches hit the windshield. I didn't stop until I saw the highway lights again. When I finally got signal, I called the local ranger station. They said they'd send someone out. A few days later, I got a call back. The ranger said they found the campsite, my tent, Clark's gear, but no sign of him. Except one thing. They found the old lantern. It was hanging from a tree branch, still lit, and next to it, carved into the bark, was my name. After what happened in Ashpine Forest, I stopped camping for good. But I still liked getting away. Quiet places, off-grid towns, anywhere I could breathe and think. So, when I found an Airbnb listing for a restored 1930s cottage in a small town called Millhaven, it looked perfect. 2 nights alone, surrounded by trees, no neighbors for miles. The reviews were glowing. Peaceful, authentic charm, amazing host. The kind of too perfect praise you don't question until later. When I arrived, the town looked half abandoned. Most of the stores were boarded up, and the gas station only sold black coffee and warm water bottles. The road to the Airbnb turned into gravel, then into dirt. By the time I reached the cottage, it was almost sunset. The house sat at the edge of a clearing, its roof sagging slightly, the paint faded from what must have been white decades ago. I got out, stretching my legs, and that's when I saw her, the host, Clara. She looked like she belonged in another time. Long gray coat, hair pinned back, polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Long drive?" she asked softly. "Yeah," I said. "Looks great though, just like the pictures." Her smile twitched. "You're the first guest we've had in a while." She handed me the key, then added, almost as an afterthought, "If you hear anything at night, don't open the curtains." I laughed, thinking it was a joke. She didn't laugh back. When I stepped inside, the place looked normal enough. Old wooden floors, antique furniture, a faint smell of dust and lavender. There were 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, and a living room with a fireplace that still worked. No TV, no Wi-Fi. Perfect for what I thought I needed. After unpacking, I made some tea and sat by the window as it started to rain. That's when I noticed something strange. The reflection in the glass. Behind me, for just a second, I thought I saw someone walk past the hallway, a figure, pale, blurred. I turned around, nothing. I told myself I was just tired. That night, I lay in bed listening to the wind and the creak of the old house. Around 1 a.m., I heard it. Soft voices, right outside the window. They weren't whispering in English. It sounded like chanting, rhythmic, almost like a prayer. I got up and went to the curtain, ready to pull it open. But Clara's words echoed in my head. "Don't open the curtains." I froze. The chanting grew louder, then stopped. A knock followed. 3 slow knocks on the window pane. I held my breath, waiting. Then, so soft I almost missed it, came a voice. "Please, let us in." I backed away from the window and ran to the other side of the house, but every window I passed had shadows behind it, faces pressed to the glass, dozens of them. I shut myself in the bathroom and stayed there until dawn. When the sun finally rose, I stepped out and the house looked normal again. No footprints outside, no sign anyone had been there. I packed my bags and drove straight into town. At the diner, I told the waitress what happened. She looked pale the moment I mentioned the address. "That place burned down 5 years ago," she said quietly. "Killed everyone inside, family, guests, all of them. No one rebuilt it." I showed her the Airbnb listing on my phone. It wouldn't load. Then it disappeared completely. Listing removed, host profile gone. When I checked my photos from the trip later that night, one of them made my blood run cold. A picture I didn't take of me standing at the window, and behind me, a pale figure smiling in the dark. A few months after the Airbnb incident, I reconnected with an old friend named Josh. We'd gone to school together years ago, but drifted apart after college. One night, out of nowhere, he messaged me on social media. "Hey man, been a while. You should come visit. I've got this old place outside the city, plenty of space." He'd moved away years ago, so I was surprised to hear from him. But he sounded genuinely happy to reconnect, and honestly, I needed a break from everything that had been happening lately. Josh sent me the address. It was a farmhouse, about an hour and a half from town. I decided to visit the following weekend. When I got there, I immediately noticed how isolated the house was. No other homes nearby, no cell service, and a gravel driveway that seemed to go on forever. The property was surrounded by tall, dying trees that looked like they hadn't seen sunlight in years. Josh greeted me at the door. He looked tired, thinner, with dark circles under his eyes, but he smiled when he saw me. "Man, it's been forever," he said. The inside of the house was surprisingly neat. Wooden floors, old furniture, a faint smell of coffee and dust. It felt like a mix of cozy and eerie, if that makes sense. There was a single staircase that led to a long hallway upstairs. 3 doors, one slightly open, one shut, and one locked with a heavy padlock. I asked, "What's with the locked room?" He hesitated. "Just storage," he said quickly. "Stuff from my brother." I didn't ask again, but I could tell the topic made him uncomfortable. That night, we caught up over dinner. It felt nice at first. We talked about high school, old friends, the usual. But there were moments where Josh would just stop mid-sentence and stare off, like he was listening for something. At one point I asked, "You okay, man?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I just don't sleep well anymore." When I went to bed, I couldn't stop thinking about that locked door. It wasn't just padlocked, it had been nailed shut from the outside, as if something inside needed to be kept there. Sometime after midnight, I awoke to a faint noise coming from upstairs. It sounded like someone dragging something heavy across the floor. Then a dull thud and another. I sat up, trying to listen. The sound stopped. I told myself it was probably the house settling. But just as I was about to lie back down, I heard a soft knocking sound from inside the wall behind my bed.
3 steady knocks, then silence. I froze. My heart was pounding. I whispered Josh's name, but there was no response. The knocking started again, this time closer to the ceiling. Then I heard footsteps in the hallway above me, slow, deliberate steps. I got up and crept to the door. When I stepped into the hall, I realized something. The footsteps weren't coming from the hallway. They were coming from behind the locked door. I called out, "Josh!" No answer. The door footsteps stopped. For a few seconds it was completely silent. Then, in the quiet, I heard something that made my blood run cold. A whisper, faint but clear. "Let me out." I backed away slowly. The doorknob on the locked door rattled once, then again, harder this time. I shouted for Josh, but he didn't come. The door rattled again, followed by a low scraping sound, like nails dragging down wood. I ran downstairs, grabbed my car keys, and went to the front door. But the door was locked from the inside. I swear I didn't lock it. I twisted the handle until it gave, threw it open, and ran to my car. As I drove down the gravel road, I glanced back at the house. The upstairs light was on. In the window next to that locked room, I saw someone standing there. But it wasn't Josh. It was a man, pale, expressionless, with eyes that didn't move. I didn't stop until I reached the main road. The next morning, I tried calling Josh. No answer. His number had been disconnected. I even tried to look up the address online, but there was no record of the property ever being listed for sale or even existing under his name. A few weeks later, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was an old photograph, the house, the same one I'd stayed in, only this time there were 2 people standing in front of it. Josh and someone who looked exactly like him. On the back of the photo, written in pencil, were the words, "He never left the room."